empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? We're 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to Scoop World Order. It is Selection Sunday. It is a huge day for the Ohio State Buckeyes. We are going to have a massive day in terms of what's going on in the college football landscape. Most of the projections have us playing the Georgia Bulldogs Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, a game we've never played in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, an arena in which the Georgia Bulldogs played yesterday. They've got a lot of experience in that building. It's obviously in Georgia. It will be a tall task, and it'll be something that these boys better get strapped up and ready to rock with. That being said, as always, we are thankful and grateful for you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this Sunday. A lot of NFL football coming up, so we're going to go for about an hour, leading you right into your NFL matchups. Huge game with the Browns-Texans, Deshaun Watson's debut for the Browns, and a lot of other great football. But this is a huge one. We are going to be live on BuckeyeScoop.com with all the best coverage, talking about what's going on inside the Woody Hayes, what's going on with Jackson Smith-Njigba. Will we see him again? If we see him again, that changes the calculus dramatically. We gain the best receiver in the entire college football landscape, a guy who hasn't played at all this year. So it'll be something that'll be spectacular to see. But with that being said, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Comment down below where you're from. What do you project we need to do to get done to beat these Georgia Bulldogs? And log on to BuckeyeScoop.com. It is the home of all the insider information you're going to want to know about over the next 27 or so days before we strap it up in Atlanta versus the Georgia Bulldogs. That being said, going to bring in my good friend Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you today?
I'm doing great, but it's how things change from a week ago. It was all despair and gloom and doom, and now we're on the verge of finding out, are we 3, are we 4, who are we playing? So it's a great day, exciting time to be a Buckeye, and let's go. I can't wait.
What there are a lot of people that are clamoring for a rematch. I personally think a rematch would be fantastic. What are your thoughts on us getting Georgia in Atlanta? Obviously, that is a tremendous task, just because we have we've got a lot going on. It's going to be a big one, but I think it's just going to be tough because Georgia's they are the monsters now. They're the squad that is going to be a massive deal. What are your thoughts on Georgia? We watched them yesterday just destroy LSU. They're a different animal. What are your thoughts on Georgia?
Well, let's talk about the kind of the seeding and where Ohio State is, where they should be, and who their opponents are. And I've always maintained that if TCU lost, that they should drop, and I'm still of that opinion. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I don't think that's going to happen. Whenever things start leaking out via ESPN, you have to take one, or you have to, you get the sense that they know. Last night I just, I was asked, gun to my head, how do I think it's going to come down? And I said, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State. But, I'm still not, I don't understand, what the committee's thinking and what would make TCU such an obvious pick for number 3. Ohio State's got a better win. Ohio State's got a better loss, even though it was by more points. It's how many points do you think TCU would lose if they played to Michigan? That's the question. TCU's not very good. And for years and years and years, we heard about the game control metric and how that was so important to these committee members. And Ohio State's dominated most of their games this year, where TCU's had 6 games come down to 1 score. One of their 12 games was against Tarleton State, who's an FCS opponent. So I think you can make a lot of good arguments why Ohio State should be 3 and why we should get that rematch with Michigan in the semifinal. But alas, I don't think it's happening. But you never know until they announce it. Stranger things have happened. I'd say it's probably 90% chance we're getting Georgia. You have to play Georgia to win the national championship anyway. So it's not like a frightening concept. It's just one of those ones where you'd love to get a shot at Michigan one more time, in the semifinal. But hey, playing them for the national championship, that'd be kind of a pretty significant storyline as well, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that, whoever beats, if you beat Georgia, that second game is basically, it's kind of like beating Russia in the Lake Placid Olympics, and then you still got to beat Finland. Like once you beat Russia, it's like, I mean, that's kind of what it's like. You gotta get through the big dogs, literally the big dogs down in Georgia. It's a hell of a task to beat those guys in their home state. Again, when I was a senior, I'm not going to go back to Neverland and remember one time, but it's just like, played LSU in Louisiana. We weren't as good as they were, and playing down there, it's a huge task. Like, I mean, was that the deciding factor? No, we just played like shit. But it doesn't help when the building's 80-20 Louisiana people. You're in Louisiana. I mean, it just kind of, it's a massive tilt. But, again, when you're in the North, you never get that advantage. They don't get to come play in Cleveland, or they don't get to come play in Columbus or Cincinnati or something like that. Hopefully we'll get them in Indy or Chicago eventually. But it's not the same as being in your home state, because we don't have that. We don't have a beautiful stadium in the state of Ohio the way they do with the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, which is a fantastic facility. If you guys haven't checked out my interview with the Peach Bowl president, it's fantastic. Gary Sorkin is a guy I'm going to interview again on Monday, assuming we get this bid. But he really does a fantastic job. He's been the head of the Peach Bowl for about 30 years. They've never hosted Ohio State, and they really take the kids through through the College Football Hall of Fame. They introduce them to a lot of the cultural stuff around Atlanta, a lot of civil rights stuff. It's really cool stuff. He's a great guy that is really, really at the forefront of expansion. Obviously, he's giddy about the expanded playoffs. Like, one of the big things about the expanded playoffs is they think that it'll decrease the opt-outs, just because if you're in the playoff, not going to opt out. Last year, he had Michigan State and Pitt, and Pickett, who went to the Steelers, opted out, and Ken Walker from Michigan State opted out. So you lose your two marquee stars that you'd want to promote the most, and it tarnishes the game a little bit when you don't have the two mega stars, two guys that are having nice rookie years right now. But he's really excited about the expanded playoff. Shout out Canal Fulton, shout out Warren, Ohio. Keep shout out where you guys are from. Keep these questions coming. Appreciate you guys tuning in on Sunday as we get ready for Deshaun Watson's debut with the Browns. Nevada, what are your initial thoughts on Jackson Smith-Njigba? That's a guy that he's on the tip of everyone's tongue right now. Is he healthy enough? I would think that he has to be completely healthy by now, because unless he has the worst hamstring injury in history, there's no way he's not healthy. I mean, it was just a hamstring, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see if he wants to strap up and go or not. But what are your initial thoughts on Jackson Smith-Njigba?
Well, my thoughts on that is that a player, you never like to think that on a football team where you've got so many guys, that one guy could make that much difference. But for Ohio State, he completely changes the complexion of the Ohio State offense. They go from having 1.5 to 2 viable receiving threats to having 2.5 to 3 viable receiving threats. And that changes a lot of the calculus when you're having to defend against Ohio State. And as you mentioned earlier, in my opinion, he's the best, when healthy, he's the best receiver in college football. And, probably, certainly a top 10 pick in the draft. I think right now, let's just call a spade a spade. Right now, he's being advised by his agents that maybe he should just kind of move on and train and get ready for the combine and kind of move on to the next phase. And I think there's kind of a tug at his heart going on right now, because, again, a week ago, that was an easy decision, because you're not going to play in a meaningless bowl game as opposed to get ready for the NFL draft. But now that we're in the playoff, I think that changes some things. And so, hey, look, this is a Brian Hartline, Ryan Day re-recruitment thing where they've got to recruit Jackson Smith-Njigba to come back and play. I personally think he'll play. I think, I know he's a competitive, an ultra competitive kid from an ultra competitive family. And for a chance for Ohio State to be playing the playoffs, like you said, certainly if he's not 100% healthy now, in 27 more days, he certainly will be. I think he'll play, and I think that'll be an incredible shot in the arm for Ohio State. And one of the reasons why I'm giving Ohio State a puncher's chance in a game like this is the addition of a receiver like that. That certainly helps.
Yeah, I think that he is a guy. Trey Henderson. Matt Jones is an underrated guy, because, we watch Georgia's defensive tackles. Those guys are from different planets than the guys we see in the Big Ten. Their defense is from a different planet than we've seen in the Big Ten. But if you look at our skill guys are as good as anybody in the country. So we can throw the ball, as long as we can protect on the interior. You got to double team Jalen Carter. He's probably the best defensive player in the country. Luke Whippler can help out with the guard. I prefer if it's Matt Jones, especially if he's healthy. But I think for Jackson, what a way to enhance his legacy, because his legacy is taking a shot. There's no question about it. I mean, he was a projected Biletnikoff California this year, hasn't played, came back multiple times, didn't last, probably came back too soon. If he could come back and somehow will this team to win against Georgia, then his legacy goes into the stratosphere, and he's one of those legends of the Ohio State Buckeyes instead of just being another guy, another wide receiver, another first-round pick, on to the next, whatever. And plus, I think when you add Jackson, you delete some of the weaker parts of the offense. I don't think Julian Fleming has been that great this year. I think he's a nice player, but Jackson Smith-Njigba was a first-round pick. So all of a sudden you've got Marvin, Jackson, and Emeka, 3 first-round pick wide receivers, 3 difference-maker wide receivers. Because we haven't. I think one of the biggest problems with our wide receiver group is who's our 4th guy? Jaden. I mean, Jaden plays 1% of the snaps a game. I mean, we've gone more 2 and 3 tight ends with Mitch Rossi and G. Scott than we ever have in the history of it, like literally since Jim Tressel and like the 2 tight end fullback era. Because I don't think we have any wide receiver depth after our top 3. And then Jaden is like the guy that, he's not good enough to play a lot, but he's good enough to spell like a tiny amount. So, I think by the end of these games, like sometimes our receivers are just dog ass tired when you see Julian and you see Marvin and Emeka playing that many plays with no rotation, because I don't think our young guys have developed. I mean, have you heard the name of a freshman wide receiver since we were, getting information on them in camp? I haven't seen them, and none of them play special teams. I haven't seen any of them covering kicks as gunners on punt. So if there's ever been a time where like some of these young guys can maybe step up and do something, there's, it's not like our punt returners are lighting the world on fire. Our kickoff returners aren't lighting the world. They're trying to find anybody to return a kick right now, because they've had Chip Travanum and, 50 other guys. And really Emeka is ultra sure-handed, and he generally just fair catches 90% of the time anyways. But I would love to get him off punts just so that you can save him, save a hit, save a snap, let him get a little bit more rest, because he's got to play receiver every snap. What are your thoughts on the young receivers in Nevada as we've progressed through the season?
Well, I think you can't talk about the young wide receivers and use the word progress in the same sentence, because they haven't progressed, and we haven't seen any light out of them, which is unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, these guys are all highly touted. By this time, you're generally hearing something. You're generally seeing something. You're generally, seeing flashes. You're seeing Chris Olave, blow up at the end of, in the Michigan game, or block a punt or make a play. And we're seeing none of that. And not writing them off by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely an odd situation for sure. And it definitely is one that gives you pause. Is it evaluation? Is it development? Is it coaching? Is it scheme? What is it? But it's a something. And I think we'll find out a lot more about that in the next 27 days as they go through this bowl prep, because you're going to need some guys to step up. And generally this is the time of year when we start hearing about guys stepping up. So hopefully on our next telecast, we're talking about some of these freshman wide receivers and, what they could do and what they're doing. But as of right now, it's nada. I mean, it's like a horse race where they're all tied for last, and we're waiting for one guy to break out of the pack. But again, I'm not writing them off by any means, but it's a weird one.
Yeah, it's real interesting. So there's been kind of a funky thing that's gone on. The Fiesta Bowl sent out emails to a bunch of people that have covered Ohio State at the Fiesta Bowl. I think if someone just has an itchy trigger finger, but if for some strange reason that means that we got the Wolverines in Arizona, that would be fantastic. Again, I just think that's a snafu. I get emails all the time from the playoff committee, national championship, because I was credentialed to cover the national title game against Alabama. It's the only game I've ever been credentialed for, just because I didn't feel like paying $2,000 for a ticket, and I went with Clay Hall and we did the little pregame show and that kind of thing. But so I don't know if that's a snafu. I think it would be a dream scenario. Honestly, if I'm ESPN, I don't know how I don't get one last squeeze out of the Ohio State Michigan game when you know that that'll be a ratings monster. I think that, ideally, the weird thing for me is, and I'll ask you on this one, Nevada, there's a 4 o'clock kick and an 8 o'clock kick. Which game, if you assume that it's chalk and it's Georgia versus Ohio State, Michigan versus TCU, one's in the is West Coast time, Pacific time, one is East Coast time. Which game would you put in which slot? Would you put the bigger draw of Georgia Ohio State at 8, or do you put the West Coast game at 8? So that's something I was thinking about earlier, and I was like, you think you put Ohio State Georgia at 8 like they did with Alabama Ohio State in 14. But what were your thoughts initially beyond that as we march into the announcement? The announcement's going to start in about 5 minutes, so we'll be updating it live on here.
Well, typically, the higher seed game goes first. You know what I'm saying? And the theory is, I mean, even though it's the game's not for a week after that they get more rest, or they get the advantage of being able to play their game and then watch the next game, and that's typically how those things go. So that's what my natural inclination would go. But with this, who knows? But back to your point about the Ohio State Fiesta Bowl option, and back to when we were talking about originally about it. I mean, I guess the question is, does the committee really want to set up a potential where there would be an all Big Ten championship game, which would seem like that would kind of limit the geographic interest of it? And two, would they really want to miss out on an Ohio State Michigan 2, which would be just unprecedented? I mean, if I'm the broadcasters and I have a chance at having an Ohio State Michigan 2, I'm doing everything in my power to arrange for that game to happen. And the one way they can arrange for that game to happen is put Ohio State at 3 and put TCU at 4. Now, again, not saying that's going to happen, not even thinking that's a likely outcome, but boy, from a financial standpoint, that would make so much sense. But like I said, we'll know shortly if somebody's got an itchy trigger finger with the Fiesta Bowl, or if there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I think if you're a college football fan, you want to see the rematch, the Ohio State Michigan rematch, and then you also want to see the winner play Georgia. Because TCU is going to lose regardless of who they play against. TCU is not very good. They proved it yesterday. They lost to K-State. They had everything on the line to win the Big 12. They didn't get it done. I think every team dreams that they would get to play TCU, but I think that I think that the compelling match would be Ohio State Michigan. I think it would make our fan base excited. I think that the ticket prices would probably set an all-time record for a bowl playoff game. Just because I think Ohio State our fans love the desert. They love Tempe. They drink every bar dry. They fill up every hotel. They fly to Vegas for 2 days beforehand, and they go there and party. And so it's just like, that's where everybody wants to go, and it's like, I mean, I get TCU. TCU is like a cute little program, but they don't have the blue collar A+ appeal of Ohio State, Michigan. So let them go play Georgia. Let them get waxed, and then we go from there. So this is getting ready to start up.
Well,
go ahead.
The other thing, Kirk, is, I mean, if you watch the TCU Kansas State game, the game went to overtime. They were down by 11, and Kansas State muffed a punt, got them back in the game. I mean, if it's not for that muff punt, they might lose that game by 3 touchdowns. I mean, they were out of the game. So it was like, we go back to that whole game control metric. I guess in previous years it's meant everything, and this year what the committee would have to say is game control means absolutely nothing this year. It means nothing. It doesn't matter if you win all your games. All it matters is your worst loss. Doesn't even matter how you did. Just how many points did you lose that game by? That's what it would come down to. Because that's the only way you can rationalize putting TCU in over us. TCU is not a conference champion. TCU doesn't have a better record. TCU, I mean, none of it makes any sense to me. But we'll see soon enough. Do we have any questions? And I see tons and tons of people. Or do we have any questions in there that they people?
Yeah, let me dig through these, guys. Shout out where you're from, guys. Bang that like button. There's about 250 of you guys in here. Appreciate you guys. Click on that like button. That means a lot for this video. Helps us out a lot. This is a great one. Nevada, how do you think Deion Sanders is gonna do at Colorado?
boy, I think he'll generate a lot of excitement. I'm not sold on Deion as a coach. Obviously, he can recruit. We'll see. I think that if coaching was easy, and if all required to be a coach was, hey, just be an ex-player and you'll be a great coach, then there'd be more ex-player great coaches. And the reality is, it's very different skill sets. I'm trying to think about how many ex-great players have just kind of walked in and been great college football coaches, and it's not a real long list. So I would say the odds are against him. I'm probably not as excited about it as some people, but we'll see. Maybe Coach Prime gets it done there. It's a beautiful place to do it. I can tell you that. Boulder, it doesn't get any more picturesque than Boulder, Colorado, and I'm sure he'll have a good time, and I'm sure he'll recruit well. But we'll see if he can coach.
Yeah, I love Boulder. My in-laws lived there. I used to get a one game every year. I actually saw Darnold play there when he was at SC a few years ago. Probably the best looking, like the prettiest environment of a stadium, probably outside of the Rose Bowl in the country. Stadium's all brick. It's just beautiful. And the funny thing is, like, there's just no expectations there. So it's not like Ohio State. People aren't worried. People aren't scared. People aren't whatever. So it's a little bit different than the normal atmosphere of Ohio State, where it's not just winning. It's, did we win by enough? Did we play perfect? It's just a little different. Guys, keep shouting out where you're from. Appreciate you guys. Give me some more questions. I'm looking up and down here. I see Cleveland. I see Michigan. I see people from all over the place. I love it. We're rolling right into the countdown show. It's supposed to kick off at noon. It looks like it's getting ready to roll. I got to switch my channel here. I have it on and they're doing fantasy football, which isn't what we need. All right, let's go. The selection show. But yeah, this is gonna be interesting. Keep questions come to see. Stay away from Keenan Bailey. Everybody loves Keenan Bailey. It's like the best part about Keenan Bailey is he's never actually had to coach, so people can't hate him until he actually has to coach, and then they can start hating you. So
he's like the backup quarterback or the backup wide receiver or the backup running back. Yeah, he's bulletproof right now. But no, yeah. we were having a spirited debate last night on the message board about position coaches, and we were talking about the rotations and who determines the rotations on a play-to-play basis or on a series basis. And I was trying to explain to them that's the job of the position coach. That's what the position coaches do. Yeah. And because you've been on the sideline as a coach, as a player, you've seen the chaos that goes on there, and you know how hard it is to even figure out who's going on the field, who's not on the field, like the idea that Ryan Day would be dictating that on a play-to-play basis. I'm like, his head would explode. I mean, I know he likes to micromanage, but even Ryan can't get down to that level of detail, I don't think. So
here's a big one. Does Jim Harbaugh bail to the NFL?
I've always thought he would. I think that's where he wants to be. I think I don't think he wanted to leave with dishonor, even though I think he would have left with dishonor. But now he can say, boy, I got Michigan back to where they need to be, and now I can go take that Indianapolis job. You've got Jeff Saturday there, who's kind of the interim placeholder, and let me step in and take that job. Irsay and I are close. We're both weirdos. So, yeah, I think that it's inevitable. I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's just a matter of when. And, Harbaugh coached the team to a Super Bowl, so I've never discounted his ability to coach. I just think he's a very strange person, and certainly not somebody that I'd want as a representative of our university, but he can coach, make no mistake.
No, I totally agree. I think that you don't have to be some sort of dapper, smooth guy to be a coach. I actually would rather my coach be kind of weird, kind of a curmudgeon. You look at Belichick, Parcells, Popovich, like those guys are all just weird dudes, kind of doing their thing. So we've got, it's interesting. They have five reporters all across. You can kind of see who's the most prestigious. They got Laura Rutledge in Georgia because they'll be the 1 seed, and then they kind of spread them out. And some poor bastard's going to go to Tuscaloosa where they're not going to get in. So that'll be interesting. Appreciate that like button, guys. Thomas Knowles, I assume you're not Jim Knowles' brother, but if you are, that's amazing. Look at this. He's ready. Oh, probably not. Appreciate you, dude. I think we're going to have We're gonna have the announcement here pretty quick here. Nevada, any last minute change of heart? Are we going Georgia versus the Bucks? They're getting ready to reveal it.
I think I think it's Georgia. I think Ohio State's going to open as a 6.5-point underdog. I think that game will get bet up. I think Ohio State will probably end up going into the game at like a 7.5, 8.5-point underdog to Georgia. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. If you had to rank the top 5 or the top 4 teams, how would you rank them? If you had to pick the 4 best teams in the playoff, how would you rank them right now?
Are you talking about the 4 best teams in the playoff?
Yeah,
I'd go. I'd go Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama. That's where I'd go.
That's exactly where I'd be too. I wish Alabama could get in because I think that would give Georgia a little bit more of a run. I would love to see, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan, and then that's what the dream would be. Now they're going to let TCU in, even though they don't deserve to be in. But man, it'd be nice to see Bryce Young and that Bama team one more time. I think that they're always dangerous, especially if they can get in as a 4. And I think that, if you ask Kirby Smart, I mean, give me a break. Like he'd be like, I pray to God that he's probably saying, man, TCU is way better than Bama, and God bless, TCU, and because that's a bye week for Georgia. Those guys, if they, if by some miracle of God they beat Michigan, which could happen, anything could happen in college football, then it's like a Georgia TCU national championship would probably be the lowest rated championship game in the history of cable television. So, because that would be just, you couldn't make the point spread high enough, I don't think. Keep shouting out where you guys are. Go ahead.
What I was going to say, what about USC's? What about their fall from grace, man? A week ago, we're talking about them in the playoff, them doing things, and I thought that that game, Caleb Williams for the first quarter looked like I thought he was a shoe-in to win the Heisman Trophy. He still might with this early voting. Who the heck knows? I think this is probably. We haven't talked about the Heisman Trophy. Like, this is probably the most open Heisman Trophy. Usually it's like it's a guarantee. Like, who's going to win. Yeah. I don't know who's going to win on this one. Like, just don't have any idea. I think it's going to be a very, very, I think there's going to be people that voted earlier are going to vote one way, people vote later are going to vote another way, and there's going to be everything in between. So, if gun to your head right now, who do you got winning the Heisman?
Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
and then sets them in. Because here's the thing. In my head, I would bet most of the ballots got cast after the last week of the regular season, after Ohio State, Michigan. That hurt CJ Stroud dramatically. I think that it comes down to, who was the most dynamic player on the field this year, from a rebuilding crap program that made a big step this year versus, a lifetime achievement award for Stetson Bennett, in my opinion. Like, I think that CJ had it in the bag until we gave up those last 2 70-yard runs against Michigan. I think that, when you look and you lose by 3 touchdowns as a 9-point favorite, that really puts a stain on the year for CJ. And these guys, it's media guys. They're lazy inherently. They're not going to wait around the last second. So they probably mailed it in for Caleb Williams, and if not, I'd say Stetson Bennett. But I mean, if you best player in the best team, it's I don't think Stetson Bennett's the best player on his team, but he might be the most valuable player on his team because that team really gravitates to him. It's weird because they've got Ladd McConkey, who's a 3-star nobody, and they have a walk-on quarterback, and they're 2 of the best leaders on the team, 2 of the best players on the team. They're 2 guys that probably have no NFL futures, and but they're going to be on the big stage. Like, those are guys that are going to, they're the straws that stir the drink for Georgia. And I'm telling you, like, those guys play hard. It's weird because you have Georgia, the most talented roster in college football, bar none, and they're led by a walk-on who nobody wanted. And Georgia didn't even want. They sent him to community college after a year and had him play scout team, and the guy stuck around. And but he's just a nasty, tough dude. Like, and they gravitate to that. And he's not ultra talented. He's not Caleb. He's not CJ. But I mean, he might be a 2-time national champion in a month. So we're gonna find out a lot about that. But if you make me ask about it, I mean, it's him or Caleb at this point, in my opinion. And I think Caleb, it's a good lesson to these guys. I mean, you better hydrate, you better stretch, because he pulled his hamstring, running. And if he doesn't pull his hamstring, they might have won that game. And people say, oh, well, is he worth 3 touchdowns? I'm like, well, when all of a sudden he's stuck in the pocket and he can't move, then I just, he's a different player. When you take away the dynamic ability to run and scramble like he had, then he's just a guy, So, who do you
No,
pick to win?
well, I think I'd probably have to go with Caleb, but I want to give a shout out to a guy who's not going to win the Heisman. He's not going to play in the NFL or do anything like that. But man, the quarterback for Utah was so much fun to
Yeah,
watch. I mean,
yeah,
that guy is just, again, like, to me, that's when we get these discussions about college football quarterbacks and the difference between them and pro prospects. Like, I know Ohio State does a great job of identifying pro prospects, and we got the prototypical pro prospect thrower type of quarterback. Look, I'm a college football fan. I don't care how good this guy's going to play for the Atlanta Falcons or the Chicago Bears or for the Philadelphia Eagles. What I care about how they're going to play for Ohio State, and can they beat Michigan? And I'm telling you, guys like the guy from Utah and guys like Stetson Bennett for Georgia are winning college quarterbacks. That's how you win in college. You have hard-nosed guys that can throw the ball, that are willing, on the biggest plays of the game. What did they dial up almost universally? When you said quarterback run, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, around the goal line. What they're running the quarterback, and we don't do that. We talked about this on the thing. C.J. Stroud has 0 rushing touchdowns for the past 2 years, which is an impossible stat. Like, if you look back through the history of college quarterbacks and you see how many quarterbacks have 0 rushing touchdowns, having started that many games for over 2 seasons, it's like 0.00001%. I mean, it's such an outlier. It's almost unprecedented in college football, and yet we do it. And not only do we do it, we defend it and we celebrate it. And I'm like, something, we need to get back to having a college prospect quarterback, a guy that can win at the college level, and that includes being able to run, being willing to run, and incorporating a certain amount of run into that offense. And I think that's one of the things that scares me about Georgia. Is as scary as their talent is, and their big defensive linemen, and just an incredibly roster up and down. It's Stetson Bennett's running ability, because running
yep.
quarterbacks have given us fits, and J.J. McCarthy gave us fits in the Michigan game, and that's the thing. If I talk about my number one concern defensively, it's not can we stop the run, can we stop the pass. It's can we stop him when he scrambles, can we stop him on the design quarterback runs. And that may sound like a weird thing, but that's the thing that gives me the most pause, and the thing I think it's going to ultimately decide whether or not we win that game or not. So it's I love those running quarterbacks, but I'll move on to the next topic.
Well, yeah, like it's kind of like, certain guys like Christian Laettner was a fantastic college basketball player, never really did much in the NBA, was on the dream team. But but you look at the greatest college quarterbacks of all time, Tim Tebow, Tommy Frazier, Danny Werfel, Troy Smith, like they weren't great NFL guys, but they were guys that were super productive in the systems that they were in, and they won national titles, outside of Troy. And I mean, I think that sometimes, we get into this promo. It's kind of like how, when 100% of the time over the last 22 years, if you win the rushing battle, you win the Ohio State Michigan game, and then we decide not to run the ball because we're just that slick, we're that big of gurus that why would we do what everybody else has done, or why it's like we want to buck the trend of history, of 22 years of, if you win the rushing battle, you win. And guess what? Michigan had 10 rushing yards at half, and they didn't stop running the ball, and then all of a sudden they keep pounding, and then we broke, we snapped. They didn't, and they won. So it's always curious, like when people try to buck history, because it's, if you win the rushing battle, you win the turnover battle, you win 90-ish% of the games, especially against good teams. When you're playing Arkansas State and Toledo and, the Citadel and some of the teams we play in the regular season, like you can do whatever you want. But like when you're playing a good team, it's run the ball, be physical, control the clock, take the stress off your receivers. Really, the thing about running the ball that people don't talk about enough is it takes the stress off your offensive line. Because when you get into chuck and duck mode, all of a sudden, man, those guys got to hang in there against good pass rushers. It's hard, and we honestly haven't seen a good pass rusher yet this entire year. Like Penn State was down, Michigan was down from last year with no Hutchinson, but Georgia's going to have some. TCU doesn't, Michigan doesn't, but whoever wins the national title, they're going to have a good pass rush. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting. They got another commercial break as they're leading into announcing the selections. Nevada, what if you're Ryan Day and you're getting ready to play the Georgia Bulldogs? What do you change based on what you did in the regular season, what you did against Michigan?
Well, I think it's a perfect segue what you said. I mean, I think it's totally counterintuitive to what you would think you'd have to do, but I think you have to run the ball on Georgia. You
Yeah.
have to run the ball on Georgia. I think back on that 2015 game when we played Alabama, and Zeke went for 245 yards or whatever it was, or ridiculous. I know he had that one big run, but he was gacking them the whole game. And I think you've got to run. You've got to run right at them, negate some of their speed, that lateral speed that they have in abundance on that Georgia defense. I think you've got to line it up and run it straight at them. And look, I think back when you guys were doing that against LSU in 2007, when you had some success, it was running straight at those guys. And with Beanie, he broke one early. Almost got down there the second time for a 14-0 lead. But I think with these teams, you've got to possess the ball, you've got to control the clock, you've got to keep their offense off the field, and you've got to set that physical tone. And so, if I'm Ryan Day, that's what I'm trying to do. There aren't any easy paths to beating Georgia. There's no magic elixir. There's no, hey, let's just do this. We're better than they are. This isn't Tarleton State that we're playing here. This is Georgia. But that's what I would do. I would play fast. I would run tempo, try to tire those guys out, and I would go with a direct rushing attack, and I'd stick with it. I wouldn't abandon it. And when I'm passing, I would try to roll out, get out of the pocket, try to stay out of those obvious passing situations where you're sitting duck. I wouldn't be running all those long handoff bubble screens. I'd run a lot of jet sweep action. You're going to try to get the ball to the outside. I try to get the ball outside directly. I wouldn't have these slow developing plays because I think slow developing plays are what the Georgia defense eats up because they're so athletic. They run so well sideline to sideline. I think you got to go right at them. So that's my recipe for trying to keep the game close and try to steal it in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Andrew, appreciate you. Says there's a staff meeting at 10 a.m. Any nuggets? I've been in this exact staff meeting, Andrew, and honestly, what it is they're probably working on getting a video exchange with Georgia to start breaking the stuff down. I imagine they have an inkling it's going to be Georgia at this point, since literally I haven't seen a projection that has us playing Michigan in the first round. And, if it's Michigan, you already got the breakdowns done. You got to add one game to the breakdown, and then you got to break your game down, which I'm sure they already did. So, they're going to get to work tonight on Georgia, get a plan going. Appreciate you, Andrew, as always. But, it's just kind of, where's the team at? Where's the health at? Get a practice schedule going. Bowl practice is always miserable. Bowl practice is something it's always tough because it's kind of like you go back to training camp, and you got to get the screws put back to these guys because they've been off for a couple weeks, and you got to get them in shape, and you got to get them ready to go. And for the young guys that haven't played at all, it's time to you got to kick their asses around a little bit and see what you got, because some of these guys they haven't done anything except play scout team, and you got to actually have them do some live scrimmaging to see if they've progressed, how much better they can be, kind of get a little inkling in the back of your head in terms of, what are you going to do for a spring depth chart? And you got to talk to some of these kids at the bottom of the roster about if they're going to leave or if they need to leave. That's the other thing is this is portal season. Some of these kids, it'll be interesting since we're in the playoff, if they take off, because if you take off, I don't believe you deserve any type of, if we would win the national championship, I don't think you deserve a ring. But if you're a portal kid, you also are going to risk getting injured in practice. So there's kind of that little silly thing that you have to deal with kids. It looks like they're getting really close to announcing these rankings. It keeps saying coming up. So if you're watching ESPN, it's Galloway, Herb Street, Pollock, the normal crew, Jesse Palmer, and Reese Davis. But I think people underestimate. They always talk about spring ball and fall camp, but it really is a huge deal to get into winter ball. I used to call it, bowl practice, because those are some of the hardest practices of the year. Because you're getting ready to play a big time opponent. You got to kind of beat the Thanksgiving and beat the Christmas out of these kids, and get them ready to go to war. And it's it's a balance because some of these guys are beat up, but you also have to get the conditioning up, and you can't take it too easy on them, despite the fact that they've played. Looks like they are revealing everything now. I imagine they're going to start with 6 through 5. The Georgia Bulldogs are number 1 as projected. Number 2, I'm sure, will be the Michigan Wolverines. They're going team by team. It is on ESPN, but I'm just going to read them to you as it goes. I think 3 is obviously where all the questions are. Imagine it's going to be TCU. Georgia is just a formidable monster at this point. That's the team that nobody really wants to see. They're kind of what Alabama used to be. Kirby Smart is kind of a younger Saban. And Georgia, in my opinion, has the best high school football in the country in terms of quality of talent and coaching combined. So it'll be interesting as they go. Michigan Wolverines are at 2. So again, no drama there. Chalk so far. Nevada, any last minute switches as they announce number 3 next?
No, I'm not sure the football gods like us that much that they want to put us at number 3, but we can dream.
Yeah, we can, but it's it is what it is. I think that it would be the shock of the century if it is indeed Ohio State, but I'm projecting it'll be TCU. Even though they lost yesterday, it was an overtime loss. They played a championship. We sat at home and ate chips and dip, and that's part of the problem when you lose to Michigan is you have to play the Georgia Bulldogs in the first round. They're getting to announce number 3, which again they're dragging this a little bit for the drama because I know that this is the thing that everyone's waiting on. But yeah, it's going to be sooner. Yeah, and I agree. I think UGA's secondary is questionable. They got exposed a little bit by LSU, and I think that it was just a very interesting show. Man, they are dragging this thing on big time. I don't know what else we're talking about with the Michigan Wolverines, but as soon as they throw this on the board, we are going to talk about it, break it down. While we are waiting, hit that like button, guys. Appreciate you guys. TCU is at 3 indeed, so the Buckeyes will be at 4 versus the Georgia Bulldogs, just as we kind of projected. Michigan TCU, 12 versus 1 TCU. They're going to see the Wolverines in Arizona. We will be seeing the Georgia Bulldogs. TCU they're showing a massive reaction at their party because they get to dodge the Georgia Bulldogs, which we will not be fortunate enough to do. So we're going to be heading to Atlanta to play the big bad dogs. Nevada, coming off of the worst Michigan loss in 20 years, what does this Georgia game mean to Ryan Day's legacy? And what could it potentially do if he's to pull this game off and beat the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta?
Well, I mean, if you beat Georgia, it changes everything. Obviously sets up a rematch with Michigan, and then all the same questions get put back on the table again. But no, look, this is going to be a Herculean task. But at the beginning of the year, you knew you'd have to play Georgia at some point. You'd hope to see them in the final, not the semifinal. But you got to play them. You got to play all the teams. You got to line them up and play them. And for Ohio State, I think it's the best possible scenario, given what transpired last Saturday, which was make it into the playoffs, which was anything but a sure bet coming into today. And the fact that we're in, we've got 2 games to a national championship, which is really, there's a lot of teams in college football that wish that they were there, and they don't have that. And the other thing we haven't talked really about this much at all is really the impact on recruiting. The fact that Ohio State is going to be, in the news for the next 27 days. You're playing the number 1 team in the country. That certainly doesn't help recruiting. I give you the alternative, which is say we didn't make the playoff and we got left out of the Rose Bowl because of Rose Bowl fatigue, and then all of a sudden we're shoved into the Chick-fil-A Bowl or the Las Vegas Bowl or whatever bowl game. I mean, things could be a lot worse than having a chance to play in a game that nobody gives us any chance to win. Everybody's written us off, and you're playing with house money. And we got a pretty good team. And so, I think for Ryan Day, this is an opportunity to right a lot of wrongs. It's not like he hasn't beaten big teams before. We did to 2020 to Clemson, was a virtuoso performance. It's probably going to take something like that to beat just a terrific Georgia team from top to bottom. But that's why you play the games. I mean, Georgia's not some unbeatable juggernaut that nobody could ever stay on the field with. Let's go line it up. Let's play, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, in my opinion, and people are going to say I'm nuts and I'm an idiot and all this other shit. I'd rather play Georgia first just because you have a month to get ready for these guys. So whatever is in the far corners of the playbook that Ryan Day has been saving since he was, at New Hampshire or wherever the hell he's been from, it's just like, dude, you got to empty the chamber on this one, man. You're seeing the best team. Your team should be supremely motivated because this game will have more NFL scouts than any game in the entire season. I mean, and it won't even be close. Every team will be there. Probably every GM will be there. I can't imagine a single NFL GM being at the Michigan TCU game unless it's Arizona's GM, just because he's going to drive over from his office. But this is the main course. This is the coup de grace. This is the big one down in Georgia, and I think it's going to be fantastic. I think these guys they've got a huge opportunity. They want to be the best. They talk about want to be the class of college football. I mean, this is it. I mean, you're seeing the class of college football, the defending champions in their dome. It'll be loud as shit. We played LSU there. We played Louisiana, LSU. That was hard. Difficulty is turned on to all Madden, scaled all the way up. But you know what? You got a month to get ready for these guys. Get your mind right. I like our guys. I think that, the one good thing about a loss is I think that it helps you recalibrate and realize, hey, we got to get our shit in gear. We got to get back in order, get going again. And that's something that, when you're undefeated, sometimes you can walk into a fist fight and think you're better than you are. But when you lose the way we lost, like, it's easy to get refocused because these guys got a real chance to win a national title. You win this first one, you're either going to see your rival or you're going to see TCU by some miracle. So, if you want a chance at Michigan, you got to get through Georgia. If you want to right the wrongs, you got to get through Georgia. And can we get through Georgia? Yeah. Like you go down the list, like on paper, we have a better quarterback in terms of NFL drafts and all that other jazz. Now, Stetson Bennett's got a ring. He's tough as nails. Team rallies around him. But CJ's, projected top 10, 15 pick. I think our receivers are better. I think our line, when they're on, can hang in there and kind of stem the tide a little bit against Georgia's D-line. I don't think it's an overwhelming disadvantage. And let's be real, like DeJuan and Paris and Luke, these guys are playing for NFL draft status. So they're going to be locked in, man, because they're going to see the best guys that they've seen in 2 years on that field. It'd be interesting to see who's back. If Trey Henderson can knuckle up and play a little bit. If Mayan can heal up a little bit, I think that a month is gonna help the Bucks. Georgia had to play a physical game yesterday against LSU. We had the time off. These guys. And again, and the ultimate wild card is Jackson Smith-Njigba want to show up for work and play this week, and that'll be interesting. But Nevada, your thoughts? We got the Bulldogs as we projected. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, like I said, huge task, but let's just dream for just a second. Can you imagine if we beat Georgia and played Michigan for the national championship? Can you imagine what the demand, the ticket demand, the viewership demand, the hype leading up to that game? I mean, I think it's not hyperbole to say that would be the biggest game in the history of college football.
Oh, God, yeah. In SoFi Stadium in LA, I mean, you got the biggest game ever, West Coast, best stadium in the world. Come on. There's nothing that'll ever top that. You know that.
You could never top it. I mean, it would be the greatest spectacle of our lifetime. We'd be playing out in a stadium about 6 miles away from my house. So I'm not sure if the football gods want to treat me that well, but boy, that's fun to think about. But hey, you got one game ahead of you. I think for Ohio State, Ohio State at the end of the year was really banged up, really missing some guys. I think it can make a difference. In Georgia, look, we have nothing to lose. We're going to be under. Ohio State traditionally as an underdog has done really well. They've generally exceeded expectations as an underdog, and it doesn't happen often. But Ohio State's going to come to this game disrespected. Nobody's expecting them to win. Everybody's kind of anointing Georgia the national champion already, and I love the position that puts our guys in because it takes the pressure. You're not as tight, and football's a funny game. A bounce, a bit of luck, a key penalty here, a turnover here, special teams play there, games can change. And at that point, line them up and play the game. I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to, the drama about the Jackson Smith-Njigba thing, man, that's the key thing, fans. Watch that one to see how good of a job Day does in terms of recruiting him back into the fold, getting him to play in that game, because I think that could be the key to the upset could be getting him back playing for the Buckeyes, and I really think it might happen.
Yeah, I think that's everything. I mean, I think if you get Jackson Smith-Njigba in and he wants to knuckle up and be part of the brotherhood, they talk a lot of shit about the brotherhood and how the brotherhood's everything, but it's like, you know what? This is where we're going to see what the brotherhood really is. Are you ready to go? Or do you have the worst hamstring in the history of football? I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen him. He's got another 3.5 weeks to go. A lot of things can heal up. And then, I mean, this would make Arian Foster blush in terms of a hamstring injury. So, you get him back, it changes the calculus a lot. I mean, you get him in the slot working with Marvin and Nemeka, and that's a whole different offense. It's a whole new set of problems. Get that quick game going, get rid of that ball fast, because, these guys have the best defensive tackles in the country. They have the best defense in the country. We've never seen a defense like this. Michigan's defense isn't even close to what Georgia's defense is. But, we've been in these scenarios before. Like, we played the Miami Hurricanes. Nobody projected us to win. We played Bama in 2014 when they had Derrick Henry and Amari Cooper. Nobody projected us to win then. But it just comes down to a group of guys believing, and you need some magic. And you know what else you need? You need CJ Stroud to run the ball. Because Cardale Jones against Alabama broke their backs by scrambling. Craig Krenzel against the Miami Hurricanes broke their backs by scrambling. It's not hard, because when every inch is worth, every inch is golden, every yard is worth 2 yards, as Jim Tressler used to say in these big games, you have to go and take the free money. Have to go take the yardage. Can't be pretty. Can't sit there in the pocket and say, I'm not a running back, I'm not going to run. You got to run, or else we have no chance and you're going to get your ass kicked. And that's the problem with CJ. Is like, sometimes I think he's scared and he doesn't want to run. And I'm like, dude, you got to, against these guys, it's one thing when you're playing Tulsa and Air Force and Antarctica and the Big Ten regular season schedule. They play Indiana, Rutgers. You can do that stuff. We can get away with it. But against these guys, you can't leave anything in the chamber. You can't leave anything and say, oh, well, I got to look pretty for the NFL. You got to get going. Now's the time for you to, you want to seal your legacy, because right now your legacy isn't anything. It's a bunch of hollow yards that nobody cares about versus bad teams, no pairs of gold pants, no Big Ten East titles, let alone Big Ten titles. And now you have a chance to go win a national title, so you got to go. I mean, it's go time now. Nevada, we're going to wrap this thing up. Any thoughts, closing thoughts on this? This is the matchup we wanted. So it is the 8:00 game. It will be the late game Saturday, New Year's Eve, 8:00, Georgia, Ohio State, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Give me your thoughts on it.
I just think it's going to be a big match. I mean, it's a tall task. I mean, it's a tall task. There's no way to minimize something like that, but you have an opportunity. This is why you come to Ohio State, is to have an opportunity to play in games like this. It's not the matchup I want. I wanted Michigan in the semifinal because I wanted so bad to be able to play those guys again and turn that one around. But, hey, you got to play Georgia. You have to play them, you'd have to play them eventually. Like you said, I mean, important point. If you're going to play one of those two teams, which team do you need more time to prepare for? It'd be Georgia. Give me 27 days to prepare for Georgia. Michigan, you can get ready for them a little bit quicker. Those guys. You've been studying them all year. But, hey, let's heap on the disrespect to the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes have got no chance in this game. Georgia's just unbeatable. Not even sure why we're even going. They're going to beat us by 9 touchdowns. And let's line it up and see how it goes. And football's a funny game, and we'll be kind of monitoring bowl practice, see who's stepping up, and we'll be especially monitoring that Jackson Smith-Njigba thing, because as you said, that could be a jolt of adrenaline to a team in desperate need of some.
Yeah, I think that's everything. I think if he plays, it changes everything. It's a lot like, we lost Ted Ginn in the first play against Florida, and it changed everything for our offense.
Kirk, it's like Jimmy Chitwith coming back to play for Hoosiers when he walked across the street and they're drilling the ball. I can see Jackson Smith-Njigba just walking up there going, I think it's time for me to play ball. But I play day stays. I leave. Day leaves. That would be, wouldn't it be one of the greatest things of all time?
It
Walks
would
in the
be,
room and does that.
it
Come
would be
on,
pretty fantastic.
Jackson Smith-Njigba as Jimmy Chitwith. That would be unbelievable. Come on, Jimmy, make the right decision.
Well, I think it comes down to, what kind of balls do you have? Like, are you really, is it really this brotherhood, or is that just a bunch of bullshit marketing? Because I've never cared about the brotherhood. I care about the guys that really care about the team, because you might have 100 guys on the team, but their give a shit factor isn't the same as the top tier, as the AJ Hawks and the Schlegels and, the guys that you go out there and die for, because those are the guys you really play for. Because there's some guys that are checked out. There's some guys that are on transfer. Some guys are pouting because they didn't play enough this year. Some guys are just going to, opt out and go to the NFL, whatever. And that's fine. But, you got to really boil it down to the guys that really, really, really care. Those are the guys you play hurt for. Those are the guys that you worry about. Those are the guys that you'll do anything for. And is Jackson Smith-Njigba one of those guys? Because I'll tell you what, man, his legacy, nice, great kid, fantastic family, fantastic future. But is he going to strap up and go? Because again, the thing that Nick Saban always says that I love that he says, they don't make them like they used to. And Jackson Smith-Njigba got a real opportunity now he could tilt it a big way if he straps up for the Bucks and he puts on a show and we feed him. You give him 10 targets and you feed Marvin, and because and part of it is like our offense has to get their head out of their ass a little bit, because when we have 15 snaps in the red zone and you don't target Marvin Harrison a single time, I don't even have words. I throw it at him about 7-8 times out of the 15 and just let him score 3 touchdowns and do his thing. Because you gotta feed your best players. And if you add Jackson to the mix and you got your little tick sheet of touches where, okay, Marvin needs 10 targets, Jackson needs 10 targets, Emeka needs 8 targets. We got to feed Dallin or Trey or whoever our top back 15 times. Cade 5 touches, whatever. Marvin's probably closer to 20 touches, 20 targets. Get about 70 plays a game, so you can kind of reverse engineer who's getting the touches. But you put Jackson in the slot next to Marvin, and you put Emeka out at the Z. That's a whole different ball game now. Because like I lived it with Florida. You delete Ted Ginn, all of a sudden, Gonza's got to go to the X, and got to bring in Hartline and bring in Robo. And Roy Hall, none of those guys scare a defense the way Ted Ginn did. Ted Ginn could take the top off the ball. They're going to play 2 high safeties, makes the running game a lot easier, which again, that's why he went 7th overall in the draft or 9th or whatever it was when he went to Miami. Those guys knew what the value of a deep threat and a guy that you can't load the box because he'll torch you. It's like Tyreek Hill. You see what Tyreek Hill's done for the Miami Dolphins. That's what Ted was for us. So, but it's going to be interesting, man, because I'm telling you, like, some of these guys better find it. They better go find that courage and that heart and shoot it up and go. Because, you look at next year, new quarterback, a whole new O-line. We might not be in the playoffs next year. So this might be your last shot to win the big ring for the Buckeyes and cement your legacy. So you better find some heart and some conviction and some courage to go strap up and play this one, because teams counting on you. Buckeye Nation's counting on you. But really what it really boils down to is the 25 or 35 guys that really give a shit on that team are counting on you. The coaches that really care count on you. The ones that aren't looking for jobs and doing other stuff, and that's not a slight on Kevin Wilson or some of these other guys that have interviewed. That's naturally part of the process. But, you got to strap up and go. This is it. This isn't Tulsa. This isn't Maryland. This isn't Indiana. This is Georgia. We need everybody. And some of these guys got to, they got to figure out, they got to go look in the mirror and say, okay, I want to just do NIL deals. And then there's some guys that got to say, hey, it's time to go. It's time to be a man and man up and play and strap up and actually earn the real respect of your teammates. Not this bullshit brotherhood talk. Just add some real respect to your name. Go out there and play. And if you get your ass kicked, who cares? What's the worst that can happen? You lose. Well, guess what? Georgia beats fucking everybody they play. So you're just going to be you're going to be in a long line of teams like Alabama and everybody else that they've played over the last 2 years that beat them. So, what's the worst that can happen? You lose. Well, it's better than the can't win, don't try mentality that's infected some of these guys that just don't want to go out on the stage and risk being embarrassed. So, Nevada, any final words before we head to the board and we go and kick off NFL Sunday in about 20 minutes?
No, just it's going to be a great time to be on the message board. We really appreciate all of our members and our membership, or these views on these videos, and the listens on our podcast have just been off the chart. And we just want to say a thank you to everybody for listening and tuning in. And we're going to keep working hard to get you guys some great inside information. And I guarantee you we'll have the inside information on the Jackson Smith-Njigba saga over the next 27 days. So you want that information, we'll see you at BuckeyeScoop.com.
Appreciate you guys. Shout out where you're from. Bang that like button. And in the comments, please let me know what we need to do to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. We're going to wrap this thing up. We're going to be on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, the place to find us, as always, is BuckeyeScoop.com. We're on the message board all day, talking NFL football, talking about bowl practice, talking about the reaction of the team to seeing the big bad Bulldogs down in Georgia. What an opportunity for these guys. It's an opportunity to go kick some ass. You know what I mean? Some of these guys, a lot of people are scared. A lot of people don't want to be embarrassed. Hey, man, if you're scared, buy a dog. That's what my grandpa always told me. If you're scared, go buy a dog, because these guys can't be scared, man. You guys want to be the big bad wolf. Well, the big bad wolf's at the door now, and you better go get your 30-06 and go blow a hole through his head, and let's see what's up, all right? So appreciate you guys as always. We'll be on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you have not subscribed, you need to. It is fantastic. What a month it's going to be. Great Christmas gift. Probably the best Christmas gift you could buy anybody who is a Buckeye fan, a Buckeye supporter. Thank you to our community. You guys are the best in the business. Great people, smart people. Some of the highest up people at Ohio State pay to be a part of this community. So that tells you all you need to know. Appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. Go Bucks. Beat the Bulldogs. Thank you, Buckeye Nation. Especially thank you to you, Scoop family. You guys have a great day. Bang that like button. Go Bucks.